It was a card that I think that none of us really respected. None of us really gave a chance.
These DLC tournaments are very hard. Even if you're one of the best players in the room, it is not guaranteed that you're going to be in the single elimination top 64.
Yeah, I think you once told me that, I think it was in Atlanta when we talked about this. You're like, they limited me to only playing 18 games of Lorcana today.
I've generally said, like, I stopped playing Lorcana when they stopped putting opponents in front of me. Like, they either tell me you lost too many times and you're out, or I won the tournament. Like, I don't know. Like,
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Forbidden Mountain. Today we have a very special treat. I have none other than Merlin.
true, I'm back from Bermuda.
Yeah. Is that what they call Toronto nowadays?
I mean, I guess.
So Dsvid Nunez was the finalist of the Disney Lorcana Challenge this past weekend in Toronto. How are you doing this evening, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good. Catching up on some laundry because I didn't do it over the weekend, obviously, but life's pretty good.
Fun fact, Nunez travels lighter than any person I know.
I love personal item traveling. If I can fit everything that I need for a weekend in one backpack, it's the best.
Not only is it one backpack, it's like a string backpack.
Oh, it's a 2 gallon IKEA backpack that I swear I bought for $1.99. It might be $2.99. I just like misremembering, but yeah, it's like the
I
cheapest backpack
I
ever.
just don't even understand how it's possible, and I'm someone that's like an expert at travel. And the first
Well,
time I saw you like show up to the Airbnb with a literal backpack with your all of your items, I'm just like, I don't understand.
so you just need to think about what you need, right? If it's a 3 day weekend, you need 2, 3 changes of clothes. You need your toiletries, and then playing Lorcana, you need a deck, a pen, a pad, some dice, and a playmat.
Yeah,
And some of those are like optional. You don't really need a playmat.
it's true. You actually have an additional bag for said playmat.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. It's a that bag is I actually got that after he passed from his daughter, but the playmat bag that I have is Lightning Bolt by Christopher Rush.
Oh, okay. Okay. Got it. Oh, well, we got past the fun travel experts in us. We have some really great things to talk about. And first and foremost, you're the finalist, right? You literally were one game short of winning the Disney Lorcana Challenge in Toronto, which is probably a little stingy, a little upsetting because you were so close. But in the end, you couldn't have gotten any closer without getting there. And I think that that's still a very celebratory thing at the end of the day. And we got there by playing Amber Steel. So this is our second place deck. This is the list that you played card for card. And I think it's really interesting, in particular, about this deck and your story with that deck. So if you don't mind, I kind of want to like break that down for the audience here.
Yeah, so not everyone would know this, but we did a team stream weekend at a house in the Poconos, and then went to a tournament at the Encounter on Sunday. And I borrowed all 60 cards that were in my deck from you and Dick.
Yeah,
I did not have I might have brought some of the cards that could have gone in the deck with me,
yeah. I
but
think you had
but
like an
functionally,
I think you had like an Amber Amethyst deck that could have filled some of these things.
yeah, I had like some of the steel cards from playing green steel
Yeah,
at Chicago, but like it's not like I owned 4 Rapunzels. Like
right, right, right,
I
right.
didn't own much of this deck, and so I just borrowed the whole thing because my teammates already had it sleeved and played that deck in that tournament and split the finals where the first place prize was a Cinderella.
Mhm.
And so I went home with a Cinderella and traded the Cinderella for the deck. Basically, everything that I was missing was worth approximately 1 Cinderella, and then I owned it.
It's great.
So after owning the deck, then the following weekends were set championships on Saturday, set championships on Sunday, set championships on Saturday, set championships on Sunday.
Yeah,
Fly to Texas, play the deck in Texas, go to Block Island on a Saturday, take one off, play a set championships on Sunday, and then keep playing the deck until we go to Toronto.
yeah. Now, between Toronto or between Dallas and Toronto, we did get set five. You did like dabble like slightly in between there and play some new cards, but in general, in Toronto, what was your exact placement in Toronto? Do you remember?
Well, Toronto was second. If you're
I'm
saying
sorry,
what my placement was
in
in
Dallas.
Texas,
Yes,
I believe it was 137th. It
right.
was tied for 128th for
It was
Let It
good
Go.
enough for a Let It Go. In Toronto, or why do I keep saying that? In
In
Dallas,
Texas,
we finished
yep.
in the runnings for a Let It Go, and the deck that we have on screen here, it was a little bit different than what most had seen, I think. Or this was actually
So
not even our Dallas list. This was the encounter
yeah,
list.
that was the encounter list. So
Um,
in between the encounter and Dallas, I felt very obligated to do a bunch of testing, trying to come up with a perfect 60 leading up to Dallas. And the encounter was actually testing piglets as opposed to Ursulas, which you and I basically agree that three Ursula is like non-cuttable. You had to play them.
yeah,
So at different points, I tried cutting down the uninkables by playing three Ursa, three Piglet, no Pride lands. I tried a 2-2-2 split. Um, Leading up to Dallas, you had said, "Oh, the truth is that we need to play two Underworld, and to do that, we're going to cut a Bare Necessities and Flute."
yeah,
Um, and so, part of the benefit of being on a team is that we could walk and talk about how locations were good, and playing an inkable over an uninkable like would slightly increase the consistency of the deck, and how the locations were well positioned into green steel. And ultimately, I trusted you and Dick and said, okay, I'm willing to give this card a shot, even though it wasn't really on my radar and I hadn't played any games with it. I could see how it has potential for Dallas.
yeah. I mean, just to touch on that a little bit, it's like one of those reasons why for us, the team on average gets there a couple days early because if there's like any bitty theory of like, hey, what can we do to complete a deck? Like it gets done in those time frames. And Underworld was just like one of those conversations where like it fits all of the things we want it to do if it stays in play. And in Dallas, it felt favorable to stay in play. So that's kind of where it went. We did, we grow, right? We learn and we make these changes for ourselves because obviously, the deck in Toronto it's quite a different list. But before by we get there, we don't have any locations so whatever. We have no piglets. We went to the Ursulas like we were saying. We stuck to our guns with the 8 shift lines, where a lot of other Amber Steel decks that had been successful in Fort Worth, in Bologna, like weren't playing the queen, but we stuck to our guns and played that card as well. So it's really just one of those things of understanding where your own results are, comparing it to other results, and then really just like trusting an overall judgment. And I think the key card, like when I really look at what our list was from Dallas to Toronto, it's Lawrence. It was a card that I think that none of us really respected, none of us really gave a chance. But the moment I gave it like an actual game or two and understood its purpose, I was like, okay, this is a card that we clearly missed. This card is a clear replacement and it's just way better than the Underworld. And I wish we would have played it in Dallas.
So this is probably like a great time to talk about an important thing for me, which is the value in understanding the difference between an opinion and a position.
Yeah,
So my opinion is that The Sword in the Stone is my favorite Disney movie, and because it's an opinion, there's nothing you can ever do that will change my opinion, and you can't say my opinion is wrong. But if my position is that The Sword in the Stone is the best Disney movie, I can just be factually wrong, and it's not. It's just my favorite.
yeah,
There are clearly Disney movies that are higher quality than The Sword in the Stone, even if it's my favorite. So being able to talk with your teammates and have positions and defend positions about why a card does or doesn't do what you need it to do is how you come up with a great deck list. So we did have you and I agreed about playing the 4-4 queen shift line. Some of our teammates disagreed and played a 3-3 shift line. They were less comfortable about playing more one drops in the deck and only wanted to play 10,
yeah,
whereas I was very happy to push up to 11. And one of my favorite parts of the weekend was my opponent in top 16 was Brad Nelson, who beat me in top 8 of a Friday 1K at Starcity Games event. And he was also playing Amber Steel. So we got to have a discussion about how he was not playing any flutes. He had cut a song. He wasn't playing the third copy of World's Greatest Criminal Mind. He had the full 4 1-cost Cinderellas, and he had 3
yeah,
big Cinderellas, 3 7-cost Cinderellas. He also had the third Lawrence. So part of my discussion with him was, if you and I had tested together, I'm not sure that I would have come up to exactly the same conclusion as you, but I think maybe both of us would have merged a little bit in the middle. It's interesting. He was only playing 3 Rapunzel, and he talked about how when you are playing against good opponents, they're less likely to let you draw extra cards with Rapunzel, so the value of Rapunzel goes down.
Sure.
Um, these DLC tournaments are very hard. Even if you're one of the best players in the room, it is not guaranteed that you're going to be in the single elimination top 64, and it's single elimination. If you hit a bad matchup, you could just be out right away. But if you are someone who thinks that you have the chance to be making those single elimination rounds, because they're open deck list, there's a lot of value in having cards that are difficult for your opponent to play around, even if they're in some small number. So even though I only have one Cinderella Stouthearted, it means that any of my one cost Cinderellas represent the potential for a shifted Cinderella Stouthearted. So Brad had 3, which to me is a lot. I often am very conservative about expensive cards, like cost wise, not dollar wise. So I thought about playing 2, but with only 3 one cost Cinderellas in my deck, I wasn't confident in playing 2.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it was definitely a card that we were willing to play because we understood its position in the metagame. Where I thought that this was probably the first time in a very long time that you just had an ability to get your opponent with the card. It also really comes off the idea that the Cinderella Ballroom Sensation is like almost the like one of the least threatening things in the game. Specifically at that time when you get to this 5 or 6 ink lore like or inkwell, and you're just trying to figure out like, hey, how do I best position myself moving forward in like a post wheel situation? And very often, like post wheel, you end up having 3 or 4 ink, and you're just like Cinderella, Robin, Smee, go. When you make that line, your opponent has to like pick and choose their battles of what they're going to be getting rid of. Oftentimes, at that point in the game, Cinderella is the safest target. So having that one of, even if it was just one Cinderella, really left a line to kind of really just like slam through and break games open. I know you played double the amount of games that I did on the weekend, uh, finishing in the finals. How many times did you actually get to put Cinderella in play? The stout hearted.
It was pretty infrequent. So one of the things that Brad and I talked about was how because you are a whole new world deck, you will see more cards on average than lots of other players. Like, sure you can draw 2 extra cards with friends on the other side or whatever, but 7 is a lot more. So having different cards in your deck to draw, they'll come up more often than they will for other people. I think another thing that Cinderella Stouthearted does that was very important was sort of replacing what we wanted the locations for.
Right.
One of the things that Amber Steel can struggle against is the blue decks, the Sapphire decks, where, okay, you've used a whole new world, but you're not just winning because your opponent has had the opportunity to play one jump ahead or use their Fishbone Quill, and they have the ability to catch up with either Be Prepared or Grab Your Swords. And Cinderella does still get destroyed or banished by Be Prepared, but it's almost unkillable for steel decks.
Yeah.
So it's a way to apply pressure to your Sapphire opponents, um, either forcing them, saying you have to have to be prepared, and it's basically your only answer, or in the case of the Sapphire Steel decks, basically just winning the game by itself.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, I mean, even Ruby Sapphire, a lot of those lists remove Maleficent from their deck, so they didn't even have like the 1-for-1 trade. It's very unlikely that Cinderella is the only character in play, so a card like Be King Undisputed or Lady Tremaine is never hitting this character. It felt very well positioned in the 4.5 metagame, as many were calling it. I do think it's like one of those interesting cards. It was kind of a joke we were making about big butts in general. So like the addition of the 4 willpower and the 5 willpower cards, obviously resist 2 on top of that is a whole other level of it. But it was really just understanding where we were in the metagame and how these cards really were kind of the best of both worlds in almost every matchup in a super awkward position. For me, both of these cards are incredibly awkward for you to play with and for your opponents to play against. Because even in your normal scripts, and I really love this, anyone that watched the stream, at least is if anyone watched it like I did that day and was able, like a true fan spectator, so many times you had the option to play Ariel Spectacular Singer on 3, chose not to, and put a Lawrence in play. And I don't think the average Amber Steel player is doing that. I think the average Amber Steel player is in, like, it's just ingrained in their mind. I have to put Ariel in play on turn 3 because I have to find a song and I have to sing. When the real truth is that against all of these decks, almost every single deck in the metagame has an answer to Ariel, but almost no deck in the metagame has an answer to a turn 3 Lawrence. So the Lawrence all of a sudden starts gaining you 3 or 2, 4, 6 lore, or 2 or 4 lore, sung a song along the way. He just had so much value in the game. Also understanding that you could wait a turn to just play Ariel. Like, it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. How did you feel about Lawrence, at the end of the tournament?
Lawrence was really powerful. I mean, so part of the reason that you might want to choose to play Lawrence before you play Ariel is Lawrence has better immediate stats and can sing any of the 3-cost songs that you would find with Ariel. It's only if you really need to sing a 5-cost song immediately that you want an Ariel in play. It also, the longer you wait with Ariel, the more information you have about what song it is that you want to find. So if you play an Ariel and find a whole new world, and then your next draw step is a whole new world, that's not very good because you can't profitably use 2 whole new worlds. But if you wait, draw a card, and it's the whole new world, well, maybe now Ariel is just finding a song for you to ink or finding a song that you can sing with the Lawrence. So you're often rewarded by not immediately slamming the Ariel into play.
Yeah.
But
How
another aspect of Lawrence that was really good was because when he has no damage on him, he has 4. I'm going to say strength or it's power magic. I don't know, whatever the
strength?
strength,
Yeah.
whatever the stat line is. He's a 4/4. Because he's so big, he does not get put on the bottom of your deck with Under the Sea. And so I know I ultimately lost to green yellow in the finals, but it was another choice of a card that you could include that would pressure your opponent's Amber Emerald deck in a way that they couldn't just remove with a whole new world and generally be kind of annoying for them.
Yeah, I mean, it dodges Brawl, dodges Sisu, dodges Medusa. So, like, it really, big Sisu on top of that. So it really did a good job of dodging most of the steel removal and most, if not all, of the ruby removal that was being played. And I think that that's like a real key thing. The other thing is, at the end of the day, if they trade their Sisu 3 into it, you're like, okay, like, cool.
Yeah, so I generally think that when you are trying to succeed at the highest levels, you shouldn't include cards assuming your opponent is going to make mistakes. I
Mhm.
know some people say like, oh well, it's going to make your opponent make mistakes, and that's how you're going to have success. Lawrence, yes, it gives your opponent the opportunity to make mistakes, but more realistically, I would say it puts your opponent in a position where they might have no other choice.
Right.
Like your opponent might think, okay, I have to use my Let the Storm Rage on this Lawrence, and that's not going to remove it from play, but it'll have 2 damage counters on it. So if my opponent quests with it, then I'll be able to challenge it and finish it off without taking any damage back because it doesn't have its ability active. But having that 4 toughness means that then you get to use your Rapunzel to great effect and draw 2 cards, and then have 4 power again, so you can profitably quest or challenge.
Right. Yeah. So looking at the deck list one more time, we are approaching the end of the we're officially dead, right? Like, set point 4.5 is come and gone. Is there anything that we can take from this deck and understand that moving forward, what we can still, like, kind of just utilize the core of this? Is it still good? Do you think we still have chances to be successful with it moving forward in set 5?
I think Amber Steel is going to be powerful for as long as they let you keep singing A Whole New World. Songs fundamentally, so I would say they break an aspect of the game, except songs are designed into the game. Uh, Almost, if you have any history in any other trading card game, Magic the Gathering, Force of Will, Yu-Gi-Oh is a little weird because that resource system doesn't, like, it's just cards. But anytime you get anything for free, it's often too good. Black Lotus gives you 3 mana at the cost of 1 card for free. they tried reprinting it as Lotus Petal, where you only got 1 mana, and that card is still too good.
Still broken, right?
So
It's so good.
anytime that you could get something for free, free is for me.
Yeah,
So if a whole new world just cost 5 and was not a song, maybe it wouldn't be broken. But as something that you can like just tap your character and give up the opportunity cost of 1 lore in the case of Ariel,
yeah,
like that is going to be good. Like it
yeah,
is very unlikely, unless there is like an extreme hate piece of some kind printed, that singing a whole new world will not be good.
yeah. I mean, and even in the day and age that we're in now, where you have Ursula, you have Bare Necessities, you have Diablo, right? Like you have Prince John as like another like pseudo way to draw additional cards. You have all these things, and Whole New World's still broken.
Yeah, so in Magic the card would be Thoughtseize, and the phrase would be you can't Thoughtseize the top of your opponent's deck. But
Right.
um, you know, if you get to 5 ink or you have a Singer 5 in play at any point, you can draw a whole new world, and then the game breaks wide open.
Yeah. Yeah. And how often, in games were you still finding yourself having to pay 5 for it? Like, did it just happen and it just didn't matter?
It happens sometimes. I mean, if you have a natural like 1, 2, 3, 4 curve, and like you haven't had a Singer 5 along the way, like you played a queen, but you didn't have the shift for it. You played a Rapunzel. You played a Smee. You played a Lawrence. You played a Rapunzel. And you drew some extra cards, whatever. You haven't had any of the. So there's only 12 cards really that have Singer 5
Right.
between the Ariels, the Robin Hood, and the Queen.
Right.
So you cannot draw one of those 12 cards, and you can still be ahead on board. So the thing about a whole new world is it there's sort of a quadrant theory for Magic drafting as like put forth by limited resources. So games can be in the developing phase. They can be in a phase where you're ahead, or a phase where you're behind, or phase where there's like general parity. So um, if you're ahead, a whole new world can just help you close the door. If you're behind, a whole new world is not at its best because you potentially haven't been able to deploy all your cards and your opponent is ahead on board. But even then, sometimes it's the only card that could possibly get you out of being behind because
Right.
you need your 7 cards to be much better than your opponent's 7 cards.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's like a constant conversation of, oh, well, I give my opponent 7 cards too. That's all great and dandy, but if as long as you can use your 7 cards better, that's fine. Like you're positioning yourself the entire game to play this card, which means your deck is designed around the card. So therefore, even giving your opponent 7 cards, sometimes it's not relevant. Not to mention, it's not relevant in a world where you can string them together. Because you are going to deploy, as 7 cards way faster than your opponents are. Like a Ruby Amethyst deck can't deploy 7 brand new cards. Like they just can't. They're a 1 card a turn deck. Maybe if they're lucky, they're 2 cards. But when they're playing 2 cards, they're also playing a card that replaces itself, and it's like a low, like a 2/2 or a 1/2 or something like that, or it's a rabbit. Uh, you're the opposite. You're like, nope, I'm gonna put 3 cards into play, and all 3 of these cards have the ability to like legitimately shift into bigger, crazier threats. So one turn you might have Robin Queen, the next turn you're gonna have Big Robin, Big Queen for 5 ink, and all of a sudden your opponent's like, what just happened? And you're like, yep, I'll just sing a whole new world again because I don't have any cards in my hand. And you're that is like the way to climb back in a game when you were behind, and really just continue to use the shift mechanic, continue to use the singing mechanic, the songs, the grab your swords, and things like that. This deck is just completely designed around the card, which is like, yeah, I don't care if my opponent's drawing 7 cards; they're never going to use them better than I am.
Another part of not caring about your opponent drawing 7 cards is you can reach game states where entire swaths of your opponent's cards are basically invalidated. Um, I believe it was a game on camera where I had 4 flutes in play.
Yep.
And so while my opponent was, deploying characters to the board and, potentially very easily able to remove my characters, I had 4 flutes. If I sing a song and gain 4 lore and sing a song and gain four lore, the game is going to end. Like
Yeah,
there now is a small subsect of cards that you have that interact with my flutes in any way.
yeah. Speaking of set 5 cards, we kind of talked about this a little bit before we went on. These are the 5 cards that stand out the most that could likely impact the Amber Steel strategy here. You want to like touch on any of these in particular?
So the two that I have the most experience playing with are Prince Naveen and Daisy Duck. Um, Prince Naveen, I have been so one of my theories when testing new cards is you should play more copies than you think you're going to end up on, just so you draw the card more often and get to have more experience with it.
Yeah,
So I have been playing with 3 copies of Prince Naveen. I think it's more likely going to be 2 copies. You could even convince me 1 copy is an appropriate number, but it's a very powerful effect. In the same way that singing songs is getting something for free, when you play this 4 cost character and play a 5 cost song for free, it costs -1 mana. And one of the things about, or -1 ink, and one of the things about Steel Songs is if you don't draw those shift characters or the shift characters are removed before you get the opportunity to sing with them, then you would have to pay retail for your song. And instead, you just play a Prince Naveen and get to play your song.
yeah.
He also has Singer 6. So if you get to go back to your turn with a Prince Naveen again, he's a great singer.
I mean,
Um,
in the show, he's still a 2 lord character also.
yeah, I mean,
It's
as someone who's done a reasonably large amount of Lorcana drafting, 4 cost 3/3 that quest for 2 is it's fine. It's
yeah,
a reasonable rate for a card.
playable card. Obviously, Daisy Duck is the standout, right? It is a character that, since the moment it was spoiled, it was probably one of the more controversial cards that were spoiled. A lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people thought it was crazy. I think you and I might have both been on the line of this card's crazy. I know that you had first played with it, and you're like, okay, hold on.
Yeah, so I did a draft and it was my pack one pick one, which was I was pretty hesitant about
Sure.
because draft games are not necessarily like it can mess up your curve to draw an uninkable card that costs 1 and
Yeah.
like not be able to play your 5 or your 6. Um, but I played it and like had it in an opening hand and was like, okay, we're gonna see how this goes. My draft strategy is often to have a deck that's 38, 39 characters, and I was worried like, oh, it's gonna draw my opponent a card every time. No, it doesn't matter. Like if you go first with a Daisy, they're going to lose.
Yeah.
uh, so I had the misfortune of playing a sealed event where my opponent played turn 1 Daisy, the 2 games they were on the play, and it just wasn't close to being close. Daisy is a format defining card. I'm not sure. Amber Steel gets to downplay the drawback of Daisy giving your opponent extra cards, whereas Amber Amethyst leans into ignoring the drawback.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure which one is going to be more effective. Amusingly, historically, Amber Steel has been very good against Amber Amethyst, which in some ways will keep down Amber Amethyst.
Yeah.
But
I agree. I
I
think
think it's Daisy's world.
I think you're right. I think Daisy's gonna rule the world. Obviously, Peak Games Referee is an interesting addition here. I think that the idea that you can kind of prevent your opponent from doing their strategy. I think there's a few decks out there that are reliant on playing actions, playing songs, specifically the mirror. If you can, just stun your opponent for 1 turn and prevent them from doing what they want to do in the game, it's huge. Amber Emerald, this card I think completely shuts down because they're a kind of deck that wants to play multiple songs in some occasions. So like just telling them no, they can't do it. It's great. It also protects you against be prepared with your Ruby Amethyst opponents and things like that. So him being a 3/3 is also important because you can't just like also simply get washed away by Sisu and things like that. So I think this is going to be a card that might be interesting. We've seen it already in some decks early on. The two standouts here, I think that we are, a little, I would say, more hesitant about would be Doc. Doc, I think, is a card that I don't know that we can ever replace a whole new world, but he kind of, to me, he would speak to that concept of like, okay, maybe I don't want to play 4 whole new worlds in my deck. I'm just going to play these docks. So when I dump my hand, I'll just play this dude and draw 2 cards. I don't know if that's good enough, but I do think it's interesting.
So I think I would think less of Doc replacing a whole new world and more of Doc replacing a card like Rapunzel, where if you build like a very low curve um, Amber Steel deck that does not have, I mean, now Daisy is a character with more willpower, but if you built a deck with less willpower characters where Rapunzel is less likely to be able to draw you 2 or 3 cards, you could instead be drawing cards with Doc and trying to bridge the gap to your whole new worlds in that way.
Yeah, fair. We're both pretty seasoned flute enjoyers. Is Alan Adele? We giving the Rooster a chance?
I mean, I'm willing to give almost any card a chance. I am kind of a doubter about our Rooster friend. Um, the the thing that Flute does is sidestep the character removal,
Right.
and Alana Dale does not. You are committing more to the board with a possibility for it being removed.
Yeah.
I do recognize it has the same benefit. Like, one of the things that's very powerful about Flute is that you could be at 19 lore, play a whole new world, draw your Flute, and activate it immediately, going up to 20. And you can play the Rooster. You can immediately have another character that you already have in play sing a song and then gain that lore immediately, which is valuable. But I'm just not sure. He's not very well statted for a 4 cost character. Um, and like 4 does sing the 3 cost songs and the long game Zeus, but it
Yeah.
doesn't sing the 5s. So I don't know. I think if you're someone who believes in the Rooster, definitely put them in your deck and test them for yourself and see how they are. Um, I felt a little guilty playing set 5 pre Toronto because I didn't feel like I was giving my team every ounce of energy that I could put into it. But that's what happens when your local stores all want to play set 5. So
Uh I don't know. I think it's all fine in the end. Like I think, not to go on like a tangent, but I think Ravensburger has put the competitive player in a really poor position when it comes to these DLCs that are, within that time frame of a new set coming out. Every part of us wants to play with new cards. Like it's what we're used to. It's what we get excited for. So this like weird concept of idea that's saying I'm not allowed to yet. It's just like it doesn't make sense to me, And I believe that you and myself, and honestly anyone on the team, is good enough to say I can play games with set 5 cards and not derail my set 4 tournament. That's me personally, but nonetheless, um, very often I've said this to a couple people now, and I'm sure that you've heard me say it as well. I have referenced you as the best kept secret in Disney Lorcana. And I think it's because you were a player playing on the circuit of the Starcity Games circuit, which is a third party company that was sponsoring Disney Lorcana fairly early. I believe their first tournament was in November of last year at Pittsburgh, and then they continued on and kind of started the circuit that became a little more famous, I would say, around February in Hartford. But you have now played. You played in Cincinnati, you played in Hartford, you played in Philadelphia, Atlanta, Richmond. So you went to 5 months in a row of Star City Games before Disney Lorcana challenges started. And the truth is here, Nunez, that you had a hell of a lot of success. So
yeah. So I didn't go to the first event thinking that that was going to be how it was going to go. In December of last year, I had said, I am missing playing competitive tournaments. I'm going to go to the first 4 Star City events of the year. So I had booked a flight to Cincinnati, Hartford's drivable, Philly's drivable, Atlanta's a direct flight out of Providence. So let's do it. Cincinnati, it was a Saturday 2K and a Sunday 1K. I actually started 0-2 in the Saturday 2K, but then I was 5-0 playing for the glory of the 6-0 in the Sunday 1K, and then prize splitting the top 8 and, hopping in an Uber to get to the airport.
yeah,
Uh, those events being a 2K and a 1K and being in January, they didn't have as much publicity. Hartford was really when things kicked off, and that was the first opportunity that I met you all. Um, that Saturday 5K had 129 players, which
yeah,
was once you hit the 129th player, it's 8 rounds.
yeah,
So I had top eighted and lost in the top 8 of the Friday 1K, which was actually the top 8 was played Saturday morning,
yeah.
and then I lost to Rob in the finals of the Saturday 5K, and then I didn't make top 8 in the Sunday 1K. I only went 4-2.
Man,
I know, but that's I was on a tear.
yeah,
Even having started 0-2 in Cincinnati, I think I went like 4-3 or something like that on
yeah,
Saturday. Like I was winning like a good amount.
yeah,
But then for Philly, so this year I purchased a house. So the word mortgage in French is death debt. So I was thinking a lot about, wow, I'm going to be paying for this thing for the next 30 years, which
Yeah.
means 63 years old. Oh boy. And that was right around when set 3 came out, which was Philly. So I showed up to Philly saying, okay, well, I'm just going to keep playing purple yellow and hopefully putting some Wendy's in my deck will be okay. They'll survive grab your swords. And it was really not very good. So I think I went 5-2 on that Friday 1K, which was a gigantic 1K, but that
Yeah.
was not even close to being good enough for top 8.
Yeah.
And then Saturday, I think I went like 4-4 or something, or I had like opponents not show up. It was not great.
Yeah.
But shout out to local friend Orion. He had played green purple on Friday and Saturday, and he didn't really have any success with it. And our friend Dan had played, you actually played Dan on Friday. He was playing Jafar,
Oh,
so
okay.
he uh, he was not interested in playing any more Lorcana on Sunday. So Orion played his deck, and I played Orion's deck, and then I won the tournament on Sunday, beating Rob in the finals. Love
There
her
you
revenge story.
go.
So people knew me as a yellow purple player, and then after winning that tournament, I played green purple for 5 tournaments in a row. I played it in Atlanta on Saturday and Atlanta on Sunday, in Virginia on Friday, in Virginia on Saturday, and in Virginia on Sunday. And the crazy part about that story is I top eighted all of those tournaments.
Yeah.
So it was 6 tournaments in a row at
Yeah.
Star City that I had top eighted with green purple. So that was the deck that I chose to play in Atlanta for the DLC.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this top 8 was Atlanta with you and Colby and Ryan, and then the right was Richmond. I believe you guys split the Sunday finals, right? Is that what that is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we split the Sunday finals.
Yeah. So
But
talk to me
so
a little
for
about.
anyone who's wondering about the gang sign that is in the photo, there is a hip hop duo, Run the Jewels, made of Michael Render, aka Killer Mike, and Jamie Moline, aka LP or El Producto, and that is their pistol and fist, the Jewel Runner, whatever, hand sign. So I do that in part because when I am in top 8, when I've made there's a lot to be celebrated about making top 8 of a tournament. Most of the equity in a tournament is in being in the top 8 because tournaments are top heavy, and people care about making top 8. But I want to win the tournament. I want to be the champion. So in some ways, I'm reminding myself that the work's not done yet. There's still 3 more matches that I'm trying to win.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm coming for it.
Yeah. The gang signs always make people. They're always like, "What is that? What's he doing? What's he doing?" So there you go, everyone.
At this point, it's also like
Tradition.
I don't know. It's me. I'm
Yeah,
the guy in the mask who's got the pistol and fist up. Like, when I'm in the tournament, that's what you're gonna see.
it's very fair. Uh, Speak to me a little bit about Star City Games. So you come from Magic. I believe you won a Star City Games Magic tournament before, correct?
Yeah. So in January of 2023, I won the Star City Games Modern 20K. So
Okay.
for people who are not big tournament grinders, tournaments are frequently, or especially cash tournaments, store credit tournaments, are frequently referred to by the total prize pool. So
Right.
I didn't win $20,000. I won a share of $20,000. So for
Right.
that tournament, the first place prize was
I don't
three
know. You,
thousand
you might have
dollars.
won $20,000. That's
I
that's
mean, I might have now. This DLC finals is almost certainly the most amount of money I've won playing a card game.
yeah.
But at the time, that championship, that trophy in New Jersey was the most.
Right.
But that's one of the things I love about tournaments is the first Star City Games tournament that I played was a standard tournament in Providence on Cinco de Mayo 2012, where it was the release weekend for Avacyn Restored, and I was playing Red Green Werewolves in Standard. And I think it's great to have like level up moments available for players. So I actually was of the mindset that set championships were too top heavy and the prizes were too valuable, and it was a bad introduction for people to tournaments. I would have preferred things more similar to Magic Game Day or Pokemon Challenges, where everyone can go and get a promo card and get some experience and play in a tournament with some stakes, but not be in a top eight match where the loser might get, you know, 5 booster packs and the winner gets a $700 stitch. Like, it's just, I'll play a match where there's a golden Mickey on the line because I've been doing this.
Right.
But if you're someone who's only ever played locally with like a couple of booster packs as stakes, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it feels like they've learned from that though, right? Now we have top 8 prizing, which is
Yeah,
a,
we have top eight.
a
We have
big
top eight
deal.
prizing, and a lot of my locals are haters. They don't believe in Mirabelle, so they think that the Mirabelle is not going to be expensive. I'm going to try. I think I'm going to try to build a 4 Mirabelle deck. I think I'm going to do it.
You're gonna
Uh,
Nunez is gonna get on the meta report just because of Mirabelle.
yeah, just for Mirabelle. I have a person who works at my local store who's a big Encanto fan, and of recent Disney songs, Surface Pressure is by far my favorite.
I mean, Surface Pressure is
So
I mean, it slaps, bro. Like straight
yeah,
up.
I saw that movie in theaters with no expectations. Just was like, oh yeah, I'm going to see this Disney movie or whatever. And that song came on, and I was like, this song has no business being as good as it is. Like, it is so good.
So
Oh,
very true. So very true. Uh,
but
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've loved playing Star City Games tournaments. They're always run very efficiently. One of the things that I've maybe been a little bit of a detractor about the Lorcana challenges is I can easily finish 3 games in 50 minutes. And so having a 45-minute round timer for 2 games means between every round I have 15 minutes before the round ends. And then, true of every tournament ever is that um, a match is going to time. There's been a deck check or whatever, and the clock is going to run 10 to 15 minutes over. And so if I play for 30 minutes and then wait 30 minutes, it's not the best experience. Um, there was a tournament, like when we were in Virginia, there was a round where Starcity Games was like, yeah, we're starting the round 5 minutes early because the last round, all the matches were done. So if your opponent hasn't shown up on time, they actually have 5 more minutes before they'll be penalized at all.
Yeah.
Like, that's wonderful. I love like moving the tournament at a very rapid pace and like keep us playing Lorcana, not just waiting around for the next round to start.
Yeah. I think you once told me that I think it was in Atlanta when we talked about this. You're like, they limited me to only playing 18 games of Lorcana today, where you would have
Yeah,
played 100.
people will see me at tournaments and I'll be playing games of Arena on my phone or like games of Pokemon on my phone, and they'll just be like, "You're not like gaming enough." I'm like, "No, like I have too much spare time. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I would be playing more games if I could, but I can't." Like,
Right. Very funny. Um, yeah, I think Star City was a great. They really gave it a great shot. I think early on. I do think the announcement of Disney kind of challenges has made it more difficult. I think comparing it even every 3 months they have to compete with set championships, and then they have to worry about if their weekend falls on a Disney Lorcana Challenge weekend like Chicago, and SCG Vegas for the same weekend. It's like as a competitive Lorcana player, you're like, well, I mean, I got to go to the challenge. I got to get my nationals invite. Like, I got to do all these things. So it's really difficult to make the choice to go. I'm just going to go to Vegas for a deals, for an SCG when there's something going on. So I'll be very interested to see if they can kind of continue the success or if they even continue to push the game in the current structure. We've already seen them drop the prize pools from here and there. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I guess is there anything that like you would like to see more from them, if possible?
so for context, I don't think you play a lot of Magic and would not be following it.
Hmm.
Star City Games now, as opposed to the regional championships being held in conjunction with DreamHack, they're now being run by Star City Games. And so we used to call them GPs or Grand Prix. I
Yes.
don't know exactly what they're calling them now, but Star City is also going to be the tournament organizer for the open entry Magic tournaments, where the top 8 competitors earn an invitation to the
To the
Pro
pro
Tour.
tour, right?
So the first one of those is the weekend of January 3rd to 5th in Atlanta. So I actually have been talking with my friends about potentially like booking a flight to Atlanta and trying to play in that, let's call it a Grand Prix,
Yeah.
because it's the standard format and standard for Magic has just rotated, and I'm under the impression that it's very good and very fun. The challenge there is that now that I have an invitation to go play Lorcana, I don't know when or exactly where that is in Florida in January, so
No,
it
it's
may be too
in
much.
California in
Oh,
January.
it is in California. I thought
Yes.
for sure it had to be in Florida. All
No,
right,
it's
I'm
at
gonna have to figure
Disney.
out how to get
It's
to
at
California.
Disneyland, not
Oh, it is
Disney
at Land, not
World.
World.
Yeah,
Okay,
Disney
okay.
World is Worlds, but we don't know when that is at all. But
We don't know how to
Disneyland,
qualify for Worlds yet
yeah,
either, right?
we don't know anything, right? We don't know anything at
Yeah,
all. But Disneyland is Continentals, which is in January. We just don't know which weekend.
we
It's
don't know what
probably
day.
not the third
So
through fifth.
probably.
So, nonetheless, let's have a little fun. So this section, I like to call it
All right.
repeat after me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a sentence, and then you're going to repeat the sentence and give me said answer.
Let's do
Cool.
this. I can follow rules.
All right. I'm so happy to have earned a continental invite because.
I'm so happy to have earned a continental invite because uh, I'm a big game hunter. Like, I think that I'm really good at Lorcana, but the only way to know how good you are is to find other people who are really good and go to war with them. Like, you got to play the best, you got to be at your best, and, like, let the best player win. There is luck, but over like a large enough sample size, you like the cream of the crop rises to the top. And um, I haven't figured out how to say it without like sounding like some pompous jerk, but I'm not just confident, I have evidence that I keep winning, and it's not just because I'm so absurdly lucky. There's stuff that I'm doing that is like giving me the opportunity to succeed.
I like that. We're going to follow that one up. The one thing I wish more Lorcana players understood is.
The one thing I wish more Lorcana players understood is
Hmm,
that's a really hard one because like the it would sound like the obvious answer would be like, oh, I wish everybody understood like the drive to compete, but um, I actually like really want to write articles or create video content about different ways of how you interact with Lorcana on a competitive level. There's nothing wrong with saying the Stone is my favorite Disney movie, so I'm going to put all of the Sword in the Stone cards in my deck. But the way I enjoy playing games is about like maximizing the efficiency of my cards and my chances to win, and making the what I think is the correct decision. And I think it's really important to learn when you make a decision that's potentially wrong. It stung a little bit to lose in the finals when I inked a song on turn one, game two. If I hadn't inked the song and kept three songs in my hand, I would have had a song left after Ursula plus bare necessities to remove the Diablo. And then, yeah, both of us are on very low resources, but my opponent isn't drawing an extra card every turn with Diablo. Um, so sometimes I think being a competitive player has a negative stigma because you want us to want to compete in these tournaments and care about our results, but then it's bad if you take a negative result poorly. Um, I was very fortunate to start out 6-0 in games in Toronto. And I'm going into the lunch break, and life is great. I'm having, a sandwich with my team. Everything's awesome. I come back from the lunch break. I split a series with Blue Red. And it's like, okay, that was a bad matchup. Like, I'm okay to have escaped with just one game loss. I've still got, three more games that I can lose, and I still have the potential to make top 64. But then round five, I play against Sapphire Steel, and game one, I sing a whole new world on turn three. But notably, my opponent has inked a Fishbone Quill on turn one and a Fishbone Quill on turn two, which is one of the more powerful cards in the matchup when you're giving your opponent seven fresh cards. They untap, whatever, ready, set, draw their card, ink, play a Fishbone Quill. It's like, no, come on, you inked two. Like, you still have the third one. Like, you didn't keep it. Like, I thought maybe you had another Fishbone Quill in your hand because you had already inked two and you figured you'd never need three. But just drawing the third one there, man, come on. So I lose that series 2-0. And nobody's ever happy about losing. It's not like I was overjoyed to lose the finals. I would have preferred to be the champion of the tournament. Um, but you have to have like the mental composure to be like, okay, whatever, I lost that game, we're going to play the next game. And I end up losing 0-2, and it's my first like 0-2 finish of a round of the tournament. And I'm not like visibly angry or upset with my opponent, but I hold myself to a very high standard, and I'm not my usual like chipper, very pleasant to be around opponent. And so we report the result, and I go find a quiet place and I do 20 push-ups. I do 4 sets of 5, and by the like the fourth set, I'm like I can like feel it in my arms, and it's like starting to hurt a little bit because I'm so out of shape. But I like helps me get back into like, yes, you lost, but like we did something healthy. We got out that negative emotion. It's fine. And before the next round starts, I like happen to see my opponent, and I like go up to him. I'm like, hey man, like I just did 20 push-ups to like blow off some steam. Like I'm sorry. Like I, and not that I was awful, but like I like want to say like you played really well, and like I was frustrated that you drew the third fishbone quill, but you put 4 in your deck to draw them. Like good beats. Good luck with the rest of the tournament.
Yeah.
And so I know people can have a negative experience where there's this person who's a competitive player that believes they're very good and they get unlucky or whatever, and they lose to someone they don't think they should lose to, and then they are, assault, like they say something hurtful or whatever, and that can instantly sour your whole tournament experience. And I don't think that's representative of what the tournament experience can or should be like.
Very fair. My favorite play of the weekend was
Oh, my favorite play of the weekend for sure was on camera in top 8 playing for the Golden Mickey. It's game 3. I'm on the play, so we're feeling great about life. My opponent and all of Twitch chat has seen my hand. They know I have 7-cost Cinderella. They know I have a whole new world, but I've only got 4 ink. I've got 1-cost Cinderella in play, and I get to juice it. I get to take that top card and just give it a nice little rub on the playmat, just to slow roll us all, flip it up. Oh, it's an ink. Get to slam that ink down, put the big Cinderella in play, sing a whole new world. We're off to Vegas in the Mirage. Ooh.
and Twitch chat could not hear the literal clapping in the stands of us in
Yeah,
the audience watching.
I understand not being mic'd up and not wanting to be able to hear what we're saying while playing our match because they don't have any control if something bad happens. Um, but like, I think if your stream is too sterile, like if you're not rooting for the players, there's no drama or story. Like, yes, Lorcana is a very interesting and fun game, but like I know I have people at home rooting for me. Like I flew back from Toronto like Sunday night. I was very stressed about being able to get to the airport in time. I had a very smart and handsome driver get me to the airport, but I got back around midnight, and then I got up and went to the gym and went to work, and then Monday night I went to play at locals. Like there were tons of people congratulating me about having such a great run, and it's awesome to have people like that you play at the weeklies that are like, oh yeah, I know him. He's so hard to play against all the time. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting. I also think it puts a lot of more stress, on casting. I think it puts a lot more on them having to create all these stories without, the I guess like the additions. I can compare it to wrestling in a way. It's like, yeah, as the wrestler, you got to take the chair shot, right? Like you got to sell the chair shot, and then it's up to the commentator to deliver it. You can only hope that in those moments of you literally rubbing the mat, we're all hoping for the same thing. We're hoping that it's selling it, but if it doesn't come across that way, and they're missing the story, then like you did everything for nothing because the audience might not even have seen you do it. So I think there's a lot of that, which kind of definitely sucks as well. So, but that's life. That's kind of just where it is. And I think the only thing we can hope for is that that system continues to grow, and maybe we do get more of that. Live mic, even if it's not for an entire game, maybe the ability to use it. Like having you guys mic'd up, so if something does happen, if there is like a moment of conversation and things like that, like that could be used. I think that's a good way for them to kind of like develop these streams even further. Um, in between, you did a lot of interviews, in that day too. I think you did 3 of them, maybe 4 of them. I don't even know if they all made it to air.
Yeah, I mean, so I played a camera. Well, I guess it was technically an off-camera match. I played a feature match on Saturday, round 8,
Yeah,
that did not, as far as I know, make it to stream coverage. I also I understand the choice that they're making, but I wish that the VODs or even if the footage could be put on YouTube.
yeah,
Very amusingly, after the encounter, so you and Dick had done commentary for the matches at the encounter. I went back and watched my round 6 match, and there's Dan commentating. Dave's the kind of person who's going to go back and watch this match. And it's like, yes, I am going to go back and watch this match and figure out, was there anything that I could have done? Like, why did I lose these games?
yeah. Very fair. All right, let's play one more game here for you. Okay.
All right, let's do it.
So I like to call this one repeat or would you rather. I'm sorry, we already played repeat it for me. So this first one is I think it's a pretty hot topic, but would you
Oh,
rather play against, be prepared, or grab your swords, and why?
so I would rather play against Be Prepared.
Okay.
Um, why is grab your sword is one-sided.
Mhm.
Your opponent can commit as much as they want to the board, and grab your swords only damages your characters. Also, just fundamentally, be prepared being a 7 cost card as opposed to a 5 cost card means that the aggro decks that are playing very cheap characters like Maleficent Binding of Time or Lilo Wishing on a Star, those cards can quest for a lot before Be Prepared becomes relevant at all in the game. I played a local game. I think my opponent was playing Mufasa, but whatever they were playing, I was actually playing green purple, not even the most aggro or efficient deck. But like I was threatening that I was going to quest to 20 lore, and my opponent like untapped and drew their card, and they're like, "I need this to be a Be Prepared," and I was like, "You have 5 ink, like you need like to ink and then somehow find a 7th ink for free.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
Be
yeah.
Prepared does not do anything for you.
Right.
Like you needed to include more efficient cards to be contesting for the board. Like Be Prepared, it's irrelevant.
Yeah, yeah. Like you need Fox, you need Mally, you need all the other pieces to get there. Without them,
Right.
it means nothing. Very fair. Very fair. All right. So, would you rather top 64 cut or more Swiss rounds?
So wait, is my choice to remove the top 64 cut?
It would be to remove the top 64 cut to play more Swiss rounds to have a smaller cut after the additional Swiss rounds.
So it's really keep current system versus change the system.
Yeah.
Snap call, change the system. As someone who's played Magic tournaments and Pokemon tournaments, the largest Magic tournament that I played had 4,000 players in it. It was 9 rounds on day one, cut to day two. Day two was 6 more rounds, and then at the end of those 6 rounds, they cut to a single elimination top 8. Um, so the
That's
that
nine more
tournament,
rounds.
that 4,000 person tournament, I was 7-2, which was making the cut to play on day two, and then I went 4-2 on day two, losing to Reeve Duke, who's a professional Magic player, around 15, and he finished 31st, and I finished 102nd. Um, Currently, I don't remember exactly how many rounds of Swiss Pokemon tournaments are on day two these days. I think that the answer is 6. But Pokemon tournaments are 9 rounds on day one, where 19 match points, or generally a record of 6-2-1 or better, technically 504 also gets to 19. But either one of those, combinations of match points in best of 3 advances to day two, and then they play, I think, 6 more rounds before they cut to a single elimination top 8. Notably, Pokemon Worlds this year had an asymmetrical top cut where 8th and ninth place both had the same number of match points. So they played a match to see which one of them got to be the 8th seed in the single elimination top 8.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Notably, the tournament in New Jersey that I won was 8 rounds of Swiss on day one, where records of 6-2 or better made day two. Then there were 5 more rounds of Swiss on day two. And then that tournament cut to a top 12, where the top 4 players had a bye in
Yeah.
the single elimination rounds. And then 5th through 12th played a match to create a top 8. So
Just
I
because
actually was 11th seed in that tournament, and after making the top cut, had to win 4 more matches to win the tournament.
I'm Do they reseed the top eight, like the 5 through 8? Is that how like that plays out?
No, so like five plays 12, six plays 11,
Right, right, right,
etc.
right. But
And
I'm
then
saying through the wins.
no, I think I'd have to go back and look, but I
Yeah, I was just
think like
curious.
I think the winner of 5 through 12 plays one. I
Right.
think
Okay.
I
So
don't
it
I
is.
don't
So it
really
is like
know the
it is a
rules.
bracket, just a bracket with buys.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
bracket with buys. I
Okay.
think.
Okay. I got you. All right. One more. Really tough.
Oh no, this one's very easy. Definitely Burt Merlin back from Bermuda. Number one, it's me. I frequently wear this outfit to locals on Saturday. It was my Halloween costume last year. Also, very hot take. I don't like Merlin, six cost. Um, Reasons why. Number one, it's an expensive, uninkable card. Number two, I actually don't like the ability to search. I do think it's interesting to be able to include one ofs and search them out in your deck, but I don't like shuffling. I think it's great that in games of Lorcana, you shuffle, resolve your opening hand, aka Mulligan, uh, and then shuffle one more time, and then basically I will never shuffle again in a game of Lorcana. I don't like the dead time that it creates to have to shuffle your deck.
Yeah.
Because if you're like actually shuffling your deck to for it to be random, it's like 8 or 9 matches, which is a non-zero amount of time, and it really makes games drag on more the more and more you have to shuffle during the game.
I agree. It's
I wish I wish Berlin back from Bermuda was like slightly more playable. 4 cost 1, 4 quest for 2 with like not really relevant text
yeah.
is like
Your
not
character's
quite good
name
enough for draft
Arthur
games,
King
but
Resist One. I mean, this is a stellar card here.
I mean I've seen it
It's
happen.
got two more though.
I saw an Arthur get resist one and it mattered. So like
That's incredible.
it does have text,
It
but
does.
yeah, I don't know. I like thought about trying to offer like the coverage team like, hey, I will dress as Merlin and register 4 Merlins in my deck if you promise to put me on camera round one, and I will hard mulligan for a Merlin, and I will not ink it. I will play it like because as far as I
I
know,
did it.
it's basically impossible to lose a game of Lorcana before turn 4. So like as long as you have enough inkables in your deck, you like will guaranteed get a Merlin on camera on coverage, whether that's win or lose.
Yeah, yeah. That's the whole part, but pretty funny. Pretty funny nonetheless. So, sir, we've been talking for about an hour now. I'd love to know, who is David Nunez in the Disney Lorcana community?
Who am I?
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm just a guy.
yeah,
I mean, I'm a combination of a lot of things. A lot of things that I don't necessarily deserve because it's hard to deserve good things happening to you. But I'm very fortunate in that I'm a college educated white male with parents who have been together for 30 years and 3 little sisters who are all great, and having a wonderful community to play at. Shout out to my local game store in Pawtucket, Untapped Games. Use code single10 for 10% off your order at untappedgames.com.
description below.
They're the only store in Rhode Island that has a set championship, and fortunately, I won the one where you got the Stitch Champion playmat, and it's a good story. It's stunk to not get to go back to back, but the second one, I lost the finals to the person I had beat in top 8 of the Stitch one. So I do love a revenge story.
Nice. What brought you to
Yeah,
Lorcana, sir?
uh, there's a tweet. It's live on my Twitter at Master Nunez where I said uh, there's Archimedes and Developer Brain, and Lorcana's got Sword in the Stone cards. I'm all in. So
That's
I had sort of made like a side, like, yeah, if there's anything, like, I thought I would play it, but I was like, if there's anything Sword in the Stone, I'm like, probably going to be in. And then Develop Your Brain is a magic card. Functionally, there's a magic card called Sleight of Hand. One of the printings of Sleight of Hand has great flavor text. It's Gambling with Mages Never Is. And it has the same effect where you look at the top 2 cards of your library and you put one of them in your hand and the other one on the bottom of your library. I actually think it's potentially more powerful in Magic because of the resource system. The delta, so the Greek letter delta is used to represent the change between two things. So if you give cards in your deck a point value, where like the best card is a 10 and the worst card is a 0, often in Lorcana, the delta between cards is not as high. Because often it's just like this is uninkable or this isn't uninkable. Some decks do have cards with higher deltas. Like if your deck has a whole new world in it, a whole new world could be a literal 10 out of 10, whereas an average card is a 5.
Right.
In games of Magic, you have sometimes literal zeros and tens. Like if you have more lands in play than your deck needs to operate and cast its spells, a land is basically a 0. Or if you don't have enough lands, a land is basically a 10. So sleight of hand, when you include them in your deck, there are games where sleight of hand finds you the land you need, and it's like it fixes all of your problems. Or you have a hand with enough lands already, and you get to use sleight of hand to pick the best of the two spells. So having one of my first exposures to Lorcana be like a card that I like, Sleight of Hand, with Sword in the Stone art on it, was just like, yeah, okay, this game's probably a home run.
Yeah, very interesting. As a Magic player, as a Pokemon player coming into Lorcana, I'm sure you've been a part of many communities. Like, what is like something that you say to a community member from Magic or from Pokemon of like, hey, this is why you should try Lorcana.
So a lot of Magic players are very hesitant about Lorcana because you don't play any cards on your opponent's turn.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel that sometimes. One of the things that I really like about Magic is the opportunity to bluff. There are cards that increase your character's stats, that give them additional power and toughness, and you can use them as like a combat trick based upon the way creatures attack and block in Magic. Um, but your opponent doesn't have the information of whether or not you actually have the trick. So sometimes it's correct to make an attack that is like functionally very bad if you don't have a specific card in your hand, but your opponent like will choose to give you credit that you are making the attack because you have the card and then not block. So Lorcana lacks that depth of like being able to make bluffs like that. Um, and amusingly, those cards have only really become like competitive in a constructed sense in recent years. They've really like increased the power level of those combat tricks.
Yeah,
But otherwise, Lorcana is like very similar in game engine to Magic, except you never get the term in Magic is mana screwed or mana flooded. So if you draw too few lands, you can't cast all your spells. If you draw too many lands, you run out of spells, and then you just spend every turn. You draw a land when you don't have any cards left in hand, and it doesn't do anything. So in the game of Lorcana, you choose how risky you want to be with your deck and how many uninkable cards you want to include. But functionally, like you could play a game where every card in your deck is both a land and a spell, and so you could get curve issues where you don't have a 1-drop or you don't have a 2-drop or whatever, but you will never have a draw step that isn't the land or spell that you need.
yeah.
Pokemon is like an entirely different beast, though. Pokemon games are very strange in some sense. In So, in the history of Magic, I had mentioned Black Lotus. There's a Magic card, Ancestral Recall, which is 1 cost, blue, draw 3 cards. Um, that card is like way above rate. They've printed
We
it as a
hold
four
on.
cost card, and that's
We have
appropriate.
we have finders keepers now. Same
Yeah,
thing,
so
right?
if
Same thing.
Finders Keepers is an instant in Magic. You can play it on your opponent's turn, which is very powerful. That's almost worth a whole ink, worth a whole mana. But like 5 cost draw 3 is like a pretty fair rate for drawing 3.
Mhm.
Um, the reason I bring this up is the actual most powerful Magic card is not legal anywhere. Contract from Below is a card that you can only play if you're playing for ante, where when you play for ante, you take the top card of your deck and functionally like ante it up. If I lose this game, you get to keep my card, which
Mhm.
was a mechanic that no one liked, and so basically all cards with ante are banned. But Contract from Below is 1 black. You ante the top card of your deck, and then you draw 7.
Oh wow. Okay.
So Pokemon in 1999 included trainer cards, Pokemon, and energy. Those are the only three card types. So energy still exists and Pokemon still exist, but trainers have been split into different types of trainers. So um, in original Pokemon, Bill was a trainer that said draw two cards, and you
Yeah.
can play any number of trainers in a turn. So it's like just put four Bills in your deck. Um, the joke is that in terms of power level, like I've had discussions with like professional level Pokemon players about how friends on the other side is like basically just too good. Like I don't know how that card saw print and how we're all just okay with it existing. It's Pot of Greed. It's Bill. Like, why do you just get to draw two cards for free? Like that's nonsense. But the other card that is the defining card of Pokemon is Professor Oak, which is discard your hand and draw seven cards. And in base set, it just was a trainer. So you just could put four Professor Oaks in your deck. And
Sick.
if you wanted to, you could play four of them on the first turn of the game. So Pokemon power level has like been grandfathered into allowing players to discard their hand and draw seven cards. The way that they've balanced this is the supporter rule, where you can only play one supporter per turn,
Yeah.
and you can't play a supporter on the first turn going first. So it's sort of just it's balanced because everyone does it, where every deck is just allowed to have four professors' researches in it, and everyone's just allowed to discard their hand and draw seven cards every turn if they want to. So it's like a whole new world, except you don't have to give your opponent seven cards.
Yeah.
So Pokemon card advantage doesn't matter. It's not like you trade characters and you're like, okay, I got a 2-for-1. Like, no, you just draw seven cards. It's about executing your deck's game plan.
Yeah.
You attack and that ends your turn, and hopefully you took some prize cards and you're advancing your game plan and taking six prize cards to win the game. But functionally, Pokemon and Lorcana are like much more disparate than Lorcana and Magic, or really, I think Hearthstone is the game that I've played the closest to Lorcana. That, Force of Will is kind of close, but I think Hearthstone is a little bit closer.
Fair. Finalists of the DLC in Toronto, going to Vegas, going to Seattle, invite the Continentals. What's left? What's left? What do we need to get done before Continentals?
Get done? I don't know.
You
I
got to
just
win,
play
right?
Lorcana. I don't know. I just like playing Lorcana. Yeah, I mean, I've generally said like I stopped playing Lorcana when they stopped putting opponents in front of me. Like they either tell me you lost too many times and you're out, or I won the tournament. Like I don't know. Like there before set 5 came out, I like went to play Lurkana at the store on Wednesday, went to play Lurkana at the store on Thursday. The set came out, so I did, one of the theme deck things on Friday, did a sealed on Saturday, did a sealed on Sunday, played constructed with new cards on Monday, and then I took Tuesday off to do laundry, and then I was back at it again on Wednesday.
There
So
we go.
almost as much as Rob now, I am like, just out for the love of the game.
It's good. It's good. Did you ever think a year ago you would be this much invested?
Uh, So it's sort of a positive feedback loop where I think if I wasn't as successful as I was,
Mm-hmm.
it probably wouldn't have happened in the same way. Um, Over the course of the 5 months where I played Starcity Games tournaments, I believe they sent me checks for $2,100. So I wouldn't say, you should quit your day job over $2,100, but it makes it a lot easier to legitimize flights and hotel rooms and Airbnbs and tournament entry fees and, dinners in cities that you've never been to when you are winning.
Very fair.
um, it also like it's sometimes hard to gauge how good you are at something. I once had a conversation with my uncle who's a veterinarian about how playing Magic, I I'm learning and I win, and when I like get better, I can see that I'm getting better. Whereas in school, I don't necessarily get the immediate feedback of like learning the material in the same way. Like it doesn't affect my brain in the same way. I don't get the same dopamine.
Right.
So like I in some ways I joke that I put too many skill points into card games where I have a sister who's a PhD and a sister who's a CPA and like a sister who's on her way to being a PhD, and I just have an undergrad. So I could potentially be further along in my career or making more money, but life's also not just about money. Like I am doing something that I really enjoy. Um, and so like finding the success and having the evidence that like, oh, I'm really good at this, like I should lean into this. Like this is like, there's no guarantee or they have now announced that they're planning on printing cards into 2026, but there was no guarantee that any card game is going to last more than a year or more than a couple sets.
Right.
And it was like, I don't know. I don't know for sure that Lorcana is going to have legs to exist forever. Like, I've been around for card games existing and then not existing anymore or struggling on. Like, I talk about how free things are often too good. In the Forcible trading card game, they printed regalia, which were like zero cost items, kind of. Um, and the first two they printed were in like a theme deck, and there just were no answers to them, and they were wicked overpowered. And like just immediately that game at my locals, people were like, yeah, I'm done. Like, there's no point in like you can only play one of these two decks, and it's not interesting. And
Yeah.
that like at least on the like if I don't have anyone to play with, there's no point in owning the cards for a game because I can't play it. So you know, after set one, like with set one, it was like, okay, well, packs are $15 each. Like these cards are really expensive. I can't like I am cognizant of $400 is like potentially a week's pay for people, and I
Right.
can't just say to someone like, yeah, Lorcana's really fun. You should fire off a week's pay to come play. Like that's too much. So there was no guarantee that Lorcana was going to be around in a year. I think at this point it definitely does have the staying power, and I am optimistic for the future. But um, I was not sure. I was making choices about I'm going to have a mortgage and I'm going to, am I going to be at my job in 5 years, 10 years? Like, what is my long term plan? Like, am I going to be, do I think I'm going to be flying around the country trying to play Lorcana events? Like, is that a maintainable, sustainable thing? What am I trying to get out of this?
All very fair. Any last words? Any thank yous? Anything like that? Any shout outs?
Hey, massive shout out to the team. No man is an island. As awesome as I am, I did not do it myself. Like, I had a lot of help from other people. Dick gives me a hard time because I literally played 3 games on Friday. Like, I played 3 games of red purple against green yellow because someone like wanted to test a little bit of green yellow, and I just like absorbed what other people were saying about Amber Steel and like tried to input my opinion about what we should be doing with the deck, and then like got up off the couch Friday night and was like, okay, time to register it. I think this is where I'm at. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think for this event in particular, we put all the work in. Like, yeah, I understand Bucky was errata and like stuff like that, but in the end, the format didn't really mold or change that much. So we had already
so,
ingrained so much information that like playing games on Friday that wasn't going to be the answer.
so I actually think the format in some ways did change a lot in terms of like representation of decks. Like
Sure.
on Saturday, I played against 7 different decks in the 8 rounds that I played, and a number of them were decks that I thought was being kept down by Bucky.
Yeah, of course.
Like I played against Mufasa, and I played against Green Purple. I actually played against Green Purple in top 8, and I think I think there were a number of decks that just like really couldn't exist with like how good Bucky was. I actually am of the unpopular opinion that I don't think Bucky needed to be banned. I think it was not oppressive, maybe slightly unhealthy, but very beatable. But I also might just have like Stockholm syndrome in that like Magic cards have to get real bad before they get banned. They
Yeah.
just had an announcement today where they banned Nadu in Modern and Grief in Modern and Grief in Legacy, and then just like restricted 2 cards in Vintage 2. So, like as good as like I am saying, I think Standard might be. There was a lot of issues in Magic's competitive formats.
Yeah. Well, nonetheless, wonderful chat from you. Hopefully now more can understand the person that is behind the mask. That is Dsvid Nunez. Incredible run for you. It was so much fun for me, to sit in the audience, watch that screen, be annoyed when you were sitting in the corner behind a banner. I'm like, what is he doing over there? Like, so,
I mean, part of it
uh,
was just getting amped up. So that's
No, I meant like
I
your
guess.
your top 16 game. Like you were hiding behind a banner. I
Oh
didn't
yeah,
know
yeah,
you
yeah.
are.
They had me
Where
in
is?
the feature match area, but not on stage.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that is a. I'm gonna give one free piece of advice, and then shout out the fact that hopefully you'll either get written content or video content or both from me.
yeah.
But one of the pieces of advice that I had given to Kylie and Celeste this weekend that I would generally recommend people to try. I'm not guaranteeing that it's going to work, but Brian Kilber is a Magic Hall of Famer who did this, and I heard about it from Grand Prix champion, and I've got to get that in there just to give him a little rib. Grand Prix champion Ryan Scullen, when he won the Grand Prix, he said, "I listened to the same song before every round of every match of that Grand Prix that he won." So, for basically every Lorcana match that I've cared about for the past year, I have listened to the same song, um, which is "Run It" with Cal Scrubby, the League of Legends song.
Mhm.
And so, before every match that I go into, I listen to, "If you're gonna talk that talk, then you got to walk that walk." Like, if I'm gonna say that I'm that good, you got to back it up. Like, you can't just be all talk. You got to come and you got to battle and you got to like you can't win every match, but you got to play tight the whole time. Perfect is the enemy of good enough, but you got to play good. So that's my free piece of advice to someone who is like maybe on the fence or thinking about going to their first tournament is figure out what kind of song it is for you, whether that's a hype up song or something that you need to calm down, but something that you can use to get in the zone and like maybe alleviate some of the nerves, maybe help yourself focus if you're someone who is like, a little more all over the place and like get yourself into the mindset of like, okay, I'm playing a game of Lorcana with like potentially stakes that I care about, but I'm going to try my best. I'm going to have whatever. It's really dangerous to have a goal of like, oh, I'm going to win the tournament or I'm going to achieve this many match points because it's not entirely under your control. You could draw bad, or your opponent could draw really well, or your opponent you could hit a bad matchup, but things that you can control. Like, I'm going to try to be really diligent about remembering every Diablo trigger and trying to draw every card that I can with Diablo, whether or not I win the game. I'm going to try to remember this thing. Or, um, I'm going to be really mindful about whether I quest or challenge, whatever it is. But, like, that's my free advice is a song that's going to get you in the zone.
I like it. Well, sir, where can we find you on socials if you would like to be found?
My Twitter is at Master Nunez. I don't tweet a ton. That hopefully will change a little bit in the future, and then I'll be linking you to. I mean, I'll have to play the X or Twitter game of how to make sure a link doesn't get buried, but potentially linking you to an article or a video. But yeah, find me on Twitter.
There we go. The Forbidden Mountain is definitely going to be growing in content creation. Dsvid Nunez is going to be a key part of that, so you will definitely be seeing some stuff from him very shortly. Thank you so much for joining me this evening, sir. Once again, congratulations. It was a pleasure to watch you play all day, to see the success, to see the excitement. For me as a team, as a friend, I love watching my friends succeed. So it was really great to see you do that and come as close as you possibly can without getting there. In the end, for me to you, um, I have been in the situation where I lost in the finals of like the first official event for Transformers. And I know like I walked away from that event and I felt like I let people down. Like I let my team down. Like I let my friends down. And the one constant reminder is you didn't. You didn't let anybody down. You played awesome and we are all so very proud of you. And I don't for one moment want you to like think that you let anyone down that day. Like you played phenomenal, you played great, and you you know you came up short, and that's okay. So thank you so
So
much.
luckily, yeah, luckily I have a lot of history where like so PTQs where would be tournaments where the winner would get an invite to the pro tour and the kind of toxic thing would be second gets a set of steak knives. Like
Mhm.
the only prize people care about is the invitation to the pro tour, and so people will say things like the the worst record in a tournament is second place and the best record is winning and the second best record is O2 drop. And
Yeah,
it's like no, like that's you need to enjoy the process. You need to enjoy playing the tournament. Like if you take enough shots and like are improving and being conscientious about what you're doing, it's sort of just an eventuality that it'll come together. But like tournaments are really hard. Um, Toronto had 960 players who didn't win the tournament and one person who did.
Yeah, exactly. And 100% of the shots you don't take, you miss. Wayne Gretzky, that's going to call
Michael
it
Scott.
on this one. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys so much. All the stuff will be in the description below. How to find Nunez, how to find his unmatched, right? Was that the name of the store? Untapped.
Oh, Untapped.
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 My bad.
Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Single 10% off your order.
There it is. Shout out, shout out. Thank you guys for watching today. We'll catch you in the next video. See ya.